Hi y'all, Kraken Latte here. It's that time again where I bring you my tips, facts, or experience that you may or may not find helpful. There are a lot of questions I've been asked over the years, like, when did you start playing? Why don't you raid anymore? Why do you have so many alts? Why are you still playing? And how do you not get burnt out? I have actually been keeping track of all of these questions, even though I've not answered them, because these are honestly all very deep questions that I've been kind of unsure how to answer. I mean, just saying, I like the game and I just do, doesn't really help anyone, you know? And that's kind of the aim of my channel here, to be helpful. So, rather than giving some generic answer, perhaps it's time I share my experiences and someone might find something helpful in it. If you happen to have any questions that you want to know about me specifically with my time spent in World of Warcraft, post the question along with hashtag Kraken Tales, spelled just like in the title, in the comments of these videos. Otherwise, this is going to be the very first episode, because this might end up being a series, I don't know, we'll see. And as such, I should start in the beginning. I'm going to do this in sort of a podcast fashion, even though I do have a script to keep myself on track, because there's a lot I'm going to cover. So I guess this will be like my origin story, because it all very much defines me as who I am and how I play now. As a warning, though, my beginnings have a lot of negative stuff. And I'll sound like I'm complaining, because I kind of am. And it's a bit of a downer, and it's partly why I don't like talking about it. So if you're still on board with that, prepare for some rambling. Are you ready? Prepare to be regaled. Technically, I started playing back in ye olde vanilla days. But I'm a collector at heart. I'm not competitive, and I prefer to fly solo or with just one friend. As you can imagine, the very early days of WoW did not suit this playstyle due to the lack of proper collection systems and the strong need for a party of players to do almost any content. I also get bored very easily, and I don't like feeling unproductive. So, since this is my personality, this all greatly affects my story. Because of all that, I was a frequent early expansion quitter. I'd play for maybe a month tops at the launch of each expansion, and then quit. Delete my alts and uninstall. I know, it kinda hurts my soul. Because I thought the game was very boring, and that I'd never try it again. But, I did. Because I did this from the original Vanilla WoW launch in 2004, all the way up until Mists of Pandaria in 2012. Yeah. To me, this is actually a very critical issue that I feel still exists, where WoW is not very new user-friendly. It's much better now, for sure, but there's always room for improvement. Anyways, it wasn't until mid-Mists of Pandaria that I actually came back mid-expansion for the first time. It was patch 5.2. Yeah, 5.2. The Thunder King. Ironically, I had a terrible experience starting up again in WoW. But I had stuck around far longer this time because I was kind of playing with a friend who convinced me to come back. I say kind of because she ditched me pretty often and would never actually answer my questions. Even simple things like why I died so much when leveling because everything was constantly going to me instead of the other people around. I didn't understand the concept of threat or aggro. I'd never played an MMO before. She knew that. And I was a tank. I didn't know what that meant. She just laughed at me and said I sucked. I had picked Prop Paladin because I liked shields. And that was it. I thought it was funny to make a derpy human paladin, you know, because of all the memes. But for some reason, despite my terrible start and how seriously unfun it was for me, I stuck around. I started doing things on my own, since my friend preferred to raid instead of helping me learn to play, when she had been playing since 2004, and despite her promising she would help me when I started. But regardless, I found WoW was much more accessible now to a solo player, and I was going to start doing that. I wanted to collect stuff. I wanted to experience all the story. I was a big WoW lore nerd. I had all the books and comics and, but that's funny because I ended up raiding a lot. The second I hit level 90, which was the max level at the time, I was invited to my friend's guild and pulled into Throne of Thunder. While I was still on questing greens, mind you, and had no idea what item level even was. I was level 90 for like 2 minutes. I'm not even joking. And I was a tank. Remember that. Looking back, actually, it went pretty good. We went all the way up to Durumu, the maze boss, before they even spoke to me in Vent. It was quiet the whole time. They had said no talking during raid. Alright. They, for some reason, hadn't inspected me up until this point. It's just this story. The other tank never said a word to me. I just read the raid journal and did what it said. I felt honored, actually, to be there, because from my knowledge, it was hard to get into a raiding guild, according to what little my friend had told me. They asked me why I was in a bad gear, suddenly, in Vent, and I said I didn't know what they meant. First good sign. They were shocked that I, as a tank, was a girl. Yeah. And after being a bit mean to me, they asked why I was a tank. I said, honestly, I like shields. They went silent. And with that, they promptly removed me from the raid, kicked me from the guild, and didn't speak another word. Oh, and of course, they kicked me out of Vent. I asked my friend what had happened, because it was just sudden. And she just said I was bad and needed practice. I think she was gaslighting me. Something she was very famous for. But, that was dumb. Well, I got into another guild that was posting in trade chat, and from then on, I raided almost every single day because I was so mad that I wasn't even given a real chance. I wanted to prove I was good, I think. Though there was no one to see it, and my friend wouldn't vouch for it in that guild anyway, because she didn't want to get kicked. Apparently, according to her. I didn't even want to raid, actually. I wasn't really playing for myself at the time, though. Something I would discover way too late, many years after a lot of drama and hardship. We'll get to that, though. That's coming later. Anyways, since I was raiding so much, and I realized the server I was on was very much full of toxic people, and that the guild I was in was a literal cesspool of humanity, I started to quickly feel burnt out. And I'm not just being dramatic. I mean, these are the type of people who make fun of you for playing differently than they do. They pick on you for being new to the game. They put you down for being inexperienced, and were even predatory toward me because I was a girl. Which, I recognize the reasons why those people were awful even at the time, but it was a major pushover. And I was very easy to take advantage of because I just wanted to be liked. I didn't have any real friends. And the one I did have, I'd hardly say was good for me because she partook in and even fueled this behavior of the other people around me. Oh, as a note, she was living with me, by the way. That didn't make this any better. So, because I just couldn't stick up for myself, I dealt with it and kept raiding. Sob story, I guess. Yet, somehow, despite the ever-present creep of burnout and wondering if I was the problem, I was suddenly invigorated. I wanted to learn. No one would teach me. I had a hard lack of experience, not just with World of Warcraft, but MMOs in general. This was my first MMO. I've played many of them since that. I mean, like, 6 or 7 other MMOs after that. But I wanted to see more of this game. I wanted to see more beyond the toxic raiding atmosphere that I'd been pulled into. I loved RPGs, and especially loved the Warcraft universe. I was a hard fan of everything Warcraft. The books, the comics, the action figures. I even played the RTSs back when those came out. I paid a lot of money for those, back in the day. Warcraft 2, Warcraft 3. I was a major Arthas and Illidan fan, alright? They were just the coolest to me. So, I had to remember that. I wanted to experience more because I loved the World of Warcraft. I loved everything about it. So, While I still raided with the awful guild I was in, I started doing other content, like rep grinds and questing through other zones to see the story. I learned you could transmog your armor, and that you could collect mounts. Yeah, my friend didn't even teach me that. I learned everything on my own the hard way. That was stuff I should have learned while leveling, because, you know, they do point you to it in game when your first time and all, but my friend kept pushing me to level faster so I could hurry up and join her guild. Why I needed to be level 90 before joining her guild, I'll never understand, but we saw the type of people they were anyways. Regardless, I took it upon myself to learn everything I could about raiding. How classes worked, how the different roles worked, what it meant to be a tank, which is what I had chosen, and I was sticking with it. I dedicated myself to that huge learning curve, and I even pug raided in Heroic, which was the hardest difficulty at the time, especially as a tank. I continued this behavior all through the rest of the expansion, and even dipped into Mythic Siege of Orgrimmar when that became the hardest difficulty. I was geared to the 9s in all 3 specs. That's three completely different sets of gear, mind you, for Paladin, including glyphs and reforging and all the Valor's points and stuff. There was a lot. Enchants, gems. Yeah, I learned everything. I was actually doing very well on my own, but for some reason, that stupid need to be liked kept creeping back on me. It made me keep going back to that toxic guild that I didn't even really raid with most of the time, and raided with them in Siege of Orgrimmar, since you could now do it repeatedly, even though you wouldn't get loot unlike previous raids, because shockingly, you used to not be able to do that. They never made a pass of pride, and certainly wouldn't listen to me, despite now that I had a deep experience with the raid. Oh, and in Flex difficulty, by the way. Flex, if you remember that. That was the difficulty where you could have an uneven amount of people before the functionality of that was merged into normal and heroic. The normal and heroic were static. You know, it used to be 10, 25, and, you know, the Siege of Orgrimmar was a very guinea pig of a raid. It changed difficulties quite often. Oh well. Challenge mode was the next big thing I wanted to tackle. I learned about the gorgeous Pandarian Phoenix mounts, and I wanted them really badly. So I managed to convince my friend and a few other of my guildies to do it with me. We were making what I thought was pretty good progress over a couple months, but to no one's surprise, a lot of drama happened in that guild very frequently because they were just not good people. A lot of things suddenly exploded all at once. I don't even entirely remember what happened because it was so fast. And a large majority of the active members all quit the game. Not just the guild, I mean the game. There was only a month or so left of the expansion too, and we were half done with challenge mode. We were doing good. But they quit, including my supposed friend. I was not able to get together another group to finish it because it was so late in the expansion, and thus missed out on the adorable Phoenix mounts. I'm still salty. This, of course, reminded me why I strongly disliked needing to rely on other people to get limited duration collectibles. Being screwed over and having my time wasted is one of my major peeves, and it happened to me a lot because of how easy I was to take advantage of. So there's a lot more in the Miss Pandaria expansion I could go on about, since that's really when I started. That's why I kind of say, like, you know, oh, when did you start? Technically Miss Pandaria. I consider that's when I really started. But there was a lot of drama, a lot of backstabbing, a lot of people promising things and then telling me I wasn't worth their time before even trying. It, you know, felt great. But I won't bother with all those details. The new expansion was out, and by N'Zoth's tentacles, I was going to freaking enjoy it. I quit that guild. So, moving on. Now we're in Warlords of Draenor. I did not join a new guild immediately. I wanted a fresh start, even transferred servers to do so. This is actually when I decided to make my own personal guild, so that I could put a couple alts that I'd had in it, since I had learned it was great for mobile storage, and the guild perks were nice. This was like a druid, and it was either a hunter or a warrior. I only had like 3 characters. I don't remember. Might have been the hunter. and I wanted to put those alts in that guild. I wanted to keep playing. The mobile storage and guild perks were nice. I had invested a lot of time into this world, and I loved the world for what it was, just not the people in it. So, anyway, the first few months of the expansion I spent alone. I actually had a fantastic time. I loved the garrisons, the orcish warlords were super cool, Draenor was gorgeous, I got to go through everything at my own pace, you know, as far as like the questing and such. I didn't care if there were bugs and glitches. I'm a 90s kid. I was very used to glitches in games, especially RPGs. I played a lot of old RPGs, like the original Witcher for the PC, and like, what's another one? Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2 for the Xbox. Those were great. Glitches were very common. Oh yeah, and Oblivion. Elder Scrolls Oblivion. Oh, and Skyrim too. That came later. So it didn't bother me when things broke, because that was common, and in this case, I knew this is a live game, unlike those games, so it would be fixed. And it usually was. Oh, and remember challenge mode? That came back. The WoD version, at least, for the WoD instances. I was still so salty, though, from missing out, that I actually pugged the whole thing, even through challenge mode gold, as a tank to get them out. The Mog and the dungeon portals. I don't recommend you do this. I do not recommend you do this. This was up there with some of the worst experiences I've had in this game. Yeah, lots of nasty people. Was it worth it? But I proved to myself that I could do it, so there was that, I guess. After chilling from that for a while, that's when things changed again. Shockingly, mostly for good though, don't worry. Remember that shitty friend I had? She'd ghosted me since she'd quit back at the end of MOP, which is funny because remember, we lived together? Yeah. That's a whole other onion layer that I won't get into. Because we were IRL friends, even though she was terrible, I didn't have the heart to unfriend her. So when she came back months into the expansion, she hit me up. And guess what she wanted? Someone to heal in her new guild. Ugh. I agreed. But under the stipulation that they let me choose what healer class I wanted. They agreed, and shockingly were very understanding. They weren't quite ready to raid yet, and let me research and test all 6 healer specs because I was taking this very seriously. They wanted to go all the way into Mythic, and I wanted to be good at what I played. I didn't like Holy Paladin at all, so that's why I needed to do this. I understood by this point that there was a healthy advantage to understanding the different classes and specs in game, especially when raiding, so that you could better help your teammates. So, I settled on Mistweaver Monk, which ironically was the supposed worst quote-unquote one at the time, but I made it good. I made my own build instead of doing any cookie cutters that let me drop Uplift, one of the crappy core abilities at the time, and was able to become a chi-only healer, very rarely using mana, so I never had to pause my healing. And it was a very AoE-centric build with amazing mobility that focused on instant heals rather than HOTS. You know, heal over times. So they loved me. So much so that they dropped their 4th healer and made them go DPS, and just had 3 healers because I made up for the 4th. I really miss that build. The Chi Explosion talent and having Chi as a non-mana resource were awesome, among with all the other things that made that build great. When literally all of this was removed later with the launch of Legion, that was when I started to learn not to get attached to specific builds, but that's a different subject entirely. Anyway, during my time with that guild, I ended up becoming one of the raid leads. I was healer lead, and occasionally led the whole raid when the main raid lead wasn't present. I say occasionally, but he worked 2 different jobs with constantly changing schedules, so I ended up raid leading a lot. We did all of Blackrock Foundry and Hellfire Citadel, normal, heroic, and mythic together. It was actually really fun. Plus, I had a blast doing mythic dungeons each week. I was the favorite healer, so I always ended up with the best raid members for the dungeons, much to the displeasure of my friend, who was actually one of the other two healers, by the way. I can still hear her bitching at me now. She was the least favorite because of her attitude. She was a good healer, though. I can't dispute that. She just was mad at me a lot. Once we had heroic HFC on farm, we even sold heroic carries for the Moose Mount and AOTC. It was good times all around. And the best part? That guild did not care what I did on my own time outside of the raid schedule. So long as I showed up and did my part, everyone was happy. You'd think some respect like that would be a no-brainer. I mean, it's a game, after all, not a job. In fact, I actually used this time wisely. As long as you don't tell anyone, I made a female night elf druid on Moonguard. I can't remember if I made a new one or if it was the one I already had. Might have been the one I already had. Actually, I think it was. Yeah, it was. It was the one I already had because I was PvPing with that one back in MoP. Yep. Anyway, that druid was a female night elf on Moonguard, so I could make gold off of the horny nerds there in Goldshire. I did, actually. I did. I tend to be a very good writer, so I'll just let you imagine the naughty things that I'm not going to share that I've wrote to those sweaty weirdos. I made enough gold to buy the the expedition yak mount from Pandaria. Look, I'm getting all flustered now. 120k was a lot of gold back then, so between that and the garrison mission tables, I was set for a while. Closer toward the end of that expansion, there was some drama with the guildmaster, who, by the way, was never around for anything, when she decided to suddenly come back and insult everyone about how her boyfriend's guild was better because she was raiding with them instead of us, and they had Mythic Hellfire Citadel on farm, and we didn't because we were selling carries to the plebs. It became this whole thing, and the majority of the raid team quit in a fit of rage one night, which led to the guildmaster actually disbanding the guild because she was just that petty. You know, /G disband. Yeah, I was shocked too. I was still online inside the raid with everyone when it happened, right in front of Manorath's corpse in the middle of a carry. But rather than getting back together and finishing it, everyone just went offline. And I didn't see them ever come back online. So that was that, I guess. Luckily, I didn't have to refund the people we were carrying, because I was the middleman here. I was the one that's talking to them. But luckily, it was because we always had them pay after we were done, not before, which I'm grateful for. But still, all the gold and all the items that were in that bank were gone. You know what happens to all that stuff, including the gold, in a guild bank when it gets disbanded? It all gets mailed to the guild master. Yeah. Felt great. None of us got paid for any of that. Yeah, it all went to the guild master. And to top things off, it's also about this time some nasty stuff I won't get into went down with my roommate. The same friend I've mentioned multiple times. Yeah, needless to say, her and I aren't friends anymore, and she moved out. She was living with me for free, and I was paying for a lot of her stuff because I guess I'm too damn nice and too easy to take advantage of, so that was that. That meant, officially, I was going into the next expansion totally alone. Legion launched, and I was so done with guilds that, again, I did not join another for quite a while. I actually had a blast on my own for a few months before feeling really lonely, unfortunately, and because I truly had no one around now, in-game or at home. I was by myself, and I was used to that. And so, I ended up joining another guild. Let's just say things didn't go so great. I actually went through like 2 other guilds within the span of a few months for the first part of Legion, thanks to so much drama that constantly happened to both of them. Ugh, trust me when I say my already low faith in humanity was quite crushed. Let me get a drink here. Okay. Finally, I ended up in another guild that was decent. Not great, but decent. We started raiding and Nighthold together and went all the way through Mythic again. We never got past Mythic Grasses, but whatever, it was fine. The guild was pretty much fine, but there were a few things I didn't like. One of which is that despite my age, mid-20s by the way at the time, they treated me like a child because I liked collecting and leveling. Yeah, baby talk and everything, like, who does that? I didn't get why I was the butt of a joke. It was really irritating to me, especially since I was the new person. That's not a good way to greet your new guildies. This was the expansion that I had decided to officially make one of each class on both factions and really start experiencing everything. I had offered to play any class and any role for the guild, that way they never had to worry about needing something. And they made fun of me for that. Like, a lot. Said I shouldn't be spending time playing alts, and they should be learning that I should be learning my one class, whatever it was, because I couldn't decide according to them, and actually getting good with it. Yet, whenever they needed a specific class or role to fill in on raid night, since we always had so few people that showed up, they sure were happy to call on me. And might I add, I was usually in the top 4 on the DPS meters, even as a tank. So, it really annoyed me that they kept saying I wasn't good at my class. And we're literally downing over the guildmaster too, by the way. He was part of all this. As we're literally downing heroic and mythic Nighthold, and later selling Nightbane carries and Karazhan. If I wasn't a good DPS or tank or healer, I wouldn't have helped with the Nightbane carries, you know? Yeah. As you can imagine, I was beginning to lose my patience with people at this point. Regardless, I put up with it because I wasn't that bad compared to the previous 2 guilds with predatory assholes that I just dealt with, or even the ones I had back in MOP, so whatever. It wasn't too much to deal with, at least until the guild master decided we needed to merge with another guild. Yep, guild merger. I don't think those ever go over really well. And the problem? The ones who merged with us were serious, I mean serious, elitist, gatekeeping, micromanaging jerks. Like, hardcore. They were literally kicked out of their former guild for it and formed their own, but couldn't get enough people for a raid team. I wonder why. So, why did they join ours? Their leader was IRL friends with our guild master. The same one that liked making fun of me. You can see where this is going. It lasted a week. A week. A single week. It might have even only been like 6 days. I just remember it being a week. Part of the guild that was actually decent and smart quit and disappeared. The rest, which I was still a part of like an idiot, split. They split so hard, the 2 halves actually both transferred to different servers, like completely different. I wanted to keep raiding because Tomb of Sargeras looked really cool, and it's actually very important in lore, which remember I'm a big nerd for, so I followed the ones I liked because they actually appreciated me, and we got into a decent guild on a different server. Oh, don't worry, it gets better. Shortly after transferring, on the very first raid night, we did good. The guild seemed fine. They were nice enough. I did fine as a DPS. I was maining marksman at the time and did not offer the services of my mains. My alts, I mean. I didn't even bring them up. So we got up to normal avatar before calling it a night. It felt good. This was fine. We did almost the whole raid. As soon as it came out on the first night, this was fine. We were doing good. The next day, I noticed that none of the 8 people, 8, that I had transferred with were online, not even in BattleNet. We were supposed to do it Mythic Plus that day. We set a time and everything. They hadn't left the guild, so, you know, they didn't ghost us necessarily like that way. They just never showed up for any of the guild events like Mythic Plus or Emerald Nightmare Farms or anything for the next week. And when raid night came again, they still weren't online. None of them. For 3 weeks, none of them showed up. Not a word, not a peep. And remember, I transferred, paid real money to raid with these people I considered friends. They disappeared entirely without a word. By this point, I was very done with people. Now, I could have just stayed with this guild because they seemed nice. Maybe they were. But you know what? I was so tired of climbing up the social ladder again and again and again. I was done. I thanked the guild I was in for their time, wished them the best of luck, and left. So, this is when I made a big decision. I transferred my raiding alts to RP servers and called it a day. Moonguard for my Alliance alts, and Wormrest Accord for my Horde alts. Now, I'd been on Moonguard for a while already, but not with my mains. Just some alts for when I wanted to level and play in between raiding, PvP occasionally with my druid, and of course that same druid, my dirty druid, was still there. I liked it there. The server was nice, the people seemed friendly, if you ignore trade chat and don't go to Goldshire, but I was always hesitant of officially moving to an RP server, any of them, because my former friend had made fun of me so hard for it. Which made no sense because she RP'd. Not an RP realm, though. No, that was for degenerate lowlives, according to her. Which actually confuses me, looking back, because isn't that what an RP realm is for? RP? Anyway, I honestly wish her and I were never friends. And that I was just on Moonguard for the entirety of my WoW life. I think I would have been so much happier. Anywho, this was the last couple patches of Legion. I settled, besides the guild, I was having a great time in Legion. It's actually my favorite expansion. I settled into my new RP homes, picked up the TRP3 add-on, learned about all of that, and had set myself to creating fun and interesting characters while sitting in Stormwind or Silvermoon, depending on which character I was on. I was quite happy. At least until one of the people that I had transferred with before, to raid with, that had ghosted, actually came back online. Just one. Just one. And I think it was one of the ones that hit on me occasionally. He was nice and all. He was fine. But he asked me to join Discord, which was a bit new to me because I was still used to Vent at the time. And I had to download it. But once I did, he wanted me to chat with him and other folks since he really wanted me to raid with his guild. Sigh. I agreed. Turns out, since I didn't know who these people were, I agreed, got in Discord. Turns out, he hooked up with the remnants of the other players who split that I did not transfer with because I didn't like them and wanted to make a guild with them, including the old guild master who apparently had a falling out with his IRL friend. I was not interested. However, this is actually where I met Silverfire T. She was there. You may recognize her from some very old Let's Plays in BFA. Her and I became good friends, and I begrudgingly agreed to join this guild. Though I made a new alt instead of transferring since they were not on my servers. I made a priest this time, and did not offer my other alts even when asked. No, sorry, they had their chance. They didn't make fun of me anymore, needless to say. Either way, we actually did a lot of Mythic Plus and raided through normal and part of Heroic and Taurus. It actually didn't go too bad. I mean, there was a lot of stress, and they weren't the greatest people in the world, but it wasn't the worst experience. This is also when the Mage Tower artifact appearances really became a thing. They were around for a while, but Blizzard had finally was all like, oh, we may or may not remove these, so, panic. That meme, panic. So I started grinding for those on all of my best geared alts of each class, which I only had about 5 of the classes actually somewhat geared, and it was a hodgepodge of Nighthold, Tomb, and Antorus gear. Most of them were actually in questing greens because they didn't raid with all the classes at the time, and didn't even have the right legendaries. And this was before they added the legendary vendor. They added that way too late, so I didn't get to use that. I did this before that. But I managed to do them all. Yep, all 36 specs. I may have been a bit hardcore, but I don't regret it though. Those skins are some of my favorite weapon appearances in the game, even now. And you know what? Because it was a solo challenge, I enjoyed it. And the challenge was on me. I didn't have to rely on other people. I liked that. I don't like FOMO, which is fear of missing out when they remove stuff, but I did like that this was solo. So if I didn't get it, it would be my fault. So I was okay with it. Not like the Phoenixes or challenge mode stuff. So I don't regret doing all that. It was a lot of work. But at the same time, it also made me learn how to play all 36 specs, and I had a much greater respect and appreciation for all of them. More than I already did. Because it wasn't just by class, it was by spec. So, that was fun. As stressful as it was fun. But, to no one's surprise, continuing with the story here, the guild started to fall apart again. But I wanted AOTC. I still hadn't gotten it. Still. We were raiding, and we still hadn't gotten it. So, Silver and I and, a couple people from that guild got together and pugged AOTC, which, remember, is Heroic and Taurus. And Taurus is definitely one of the harder raids that I had experienced, at least from Mop to Legion, you know. In that span, and Taurus was definitely one of the harder ones. And it was long. Whew, long raid. We got it, but boy, that was rough. It was one of those, we stayed up till 4 a.m. with a bunch of people we didn't know who were equally determined to get it type of things. This was when I was really starting to understand myself. What I liked, what I wanted, and I realized I rarely played for myself. That's why I was rarely happy. I never did what I wanted to do. So, I swore off raiding after that. I got my pretty arcane burb, and I was good. I wanted to collect stuff and play with my transmog, and even start doing all the content I had missed, which was a lot, because those guilds sucked up so much of my time. So, going into BFA, I was super eager to enjoy it without the stress of raiding. Now, there were remnants of the guild. I was still in that guild on my priest. I refused to raid, but we didn't actually have enough for the first raid in BFA anyways, so we did some Mythic Plus. We did that for maybe the first patch, barely, before the remnants of that guild quit. There wasn't really any drama for once, they just kind of quit. Which was fine by me. I stuck all my alts in my personal guild, including my priest. I transferred him, and from then on, I officially retired myself from competitive group content. And this was just the raiding side too. I was also doing PvP from Mob to Legion as well, and so I also retired from that. I like to say retired instead of quit, because I personally feel like I earned my stripes. Good grief. Now, BFA. I'm not going to get into BFA because I actually super enjoyed BFA. It was, I think, the first expansion I really, truly enjoyed myself. Now, I liked Legion. It was great. And going back and being able to do all that content made me like it even more. I liked WoD, Warlords. I liked it for what it was. I even had fun with the raiding guild I was in at the time. But BFA, even though Legion is technically my favorite, BFA is a very close, second or third, because this was... I don't know how to put it. It was like... Let me just read the script and stop trying to, muse here. There's other details that I could have gone into between the guild hopping. But I think, even though all this was kind of negative, I feel like these major points really highlight what I consider... Yeah, there it is. That's what I was looking for. My path to self-discovery. I know that sounds really dippy, but it's true. I was a pushover, easy to abuse, I didn't stick up for myself. I was constantly in toxic relationships with people who did not appreciate or respect me just because I wanted to be liked. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be liked, but it's where you seek it that's important. And this made me very depressed and negative because I had an awful self-esteem from being told time and time again that I did everything wrong all the time. I wasn't worth people's time, and I should just go kill myself. I got that occasionally, from my own friend. It was great. And so on. Just... who you're around is very important. I can just say that right now. I even wanted to start my YouTube channel back in Warlords when I was raid leading. I wanted to do like raid guides and, you know, promote the carries. I was even in the middle of talking with the guild I was with about possibly doing some for free to help people at the very end that couldn't afford it. Maybe they lost out on their raiding guild or their friends like I had and really wanted the mount. So I was in the process of, I wanted to do that with my YouTube channel, but the friend I had at the time told me I couldn't do it because I wasn't good enough for it and that I didn't know enough of the game to sound smart. Yeah, ouch. I really wish I didn't listen to her and did it anyway. I really wish I did, because the best part? Her and I were friends for 13 years. She lived with me for 7 of those. 7 years. She was an amazing person for a long time, but got mixed up in drugs, toxic boyfriends, theft, and so on. Even, yeah, well, I won't get into all of it, but she had a terrible home life with abusive parents, and that's why I had her move in with me. But let's just say she became just like them. So, which really kind of broke my heart. But anyway. And that is why I needed an entire expansion, almost all of BFA, to heal. Silver and I were still friends, and we had a lot of fun and played together until she had to stop playing because of some family issues in very early Shadowlands. In late BFA, I kickstarted my YouTube channel, originally with ambience videos that no one watched. Which I'm still doing, by the way. I'm stubborn. Harumph. People watch them now. Anyway, until I decided to share how I made enough gold from old raids to buy the Brutosaur mount, because I told Silver about it, and she thought it was unique, even though I didn't think it was anything special, and I thought no one would watch that video. I was wrong. It's still my highest viewed video, which kinda hurts my soul, because I didn't make a penny from those views. But it's okay. It got my channel started. And let's see. Oh, somewhere in the end of BFA is also where I met Gilded Canary. You might recognize her from various Let's Plays and podcasts on this channel. She is the one who did the chibi art that I still use in my content. I do, you know, all that on my own now, but she did the base stuff for it. And her and I are super close friends now, and even play together when she has time. And at the very least, we hang out for a few hours at night and RP like nerds. I won't lie when I say I live for those times. Needless to say, I healed. I learned a lot about myself, and while all these experiences were just not great, it taught me to stick up for myself and stop taking abuse. It also taught me to play for myself. This is a game after all. Why shouldn't I be happy? So when I'm playing, I mean, I'm also working, but I do what I want, when I want, and the work part is I make videos about it. And it's thanks to wonderful listeners like you, those of you all still here with me, that I can keep doing this. It doesn't make as much as I like, but it's enough to make it worth it. And I do enjoy it. I have far better self-esteem now. Shockingly, social media has actually been good for me. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but ignoring the occasional troll, I have a lot of very genuine people that compliment me daily. Daily! That just baffles me, because you know what? I never knew how much I needed that. Like, I'm not here begging for pity, but after being put down so hard for so many years and thinking I couldn't do anything because no one believed in me besides my parents, I felt undeserving of such compliments, and now it just warms my heart to see that I can help people and that they're grateful for it. So, I mean, I know we're in the middle of the Shadowlands now. In fact, actually not even the middle, we're like almost at the end, and that I didn't cover BFA and Shadowlands too much. But, I mean, if you want me to talk more about BFA and Shadowlands, I can, but for the most part, you kind of know that story, because that's when I started my YouTube channel. So everything I was doing in game, well, you can just look back at that time period and see what I was making videos about. Because I like making videos about what I'm currently doing. Usually anyways. So, thank you all for listening. This is definitely longer, and I hope I didn't put you to sleep.